I am 33 years old. I had a serious drinking problem since a young age. My dad was an alcoholic, so booze never lacked in our house. It nearly killed me when I was only 27 and was in the for alcohol poisoning. It was too close a call, and after that things had to change. With my wife's support, I went to rehab, and proud to say I've been sober 5/1/2 YRS. My flatmate invited our friends over yesterday. It was 7 of us in total, including his friend, Mark. I've met Mark maybe 3 to 4 times over the last 2 years, and while we're friendly, I honestly don't know him that well. But you can tell he's a party guy. Likes to get loud, take shots, makes gross comments sometimes, etc. Mark brought several cases of beer and a bottle of tequila with him, so everyone was drinking and having a good time. Mark kept offering me drinks the entire night, which I'd politely decline. It's like he made it his personal mission to get me to drink by egging me on, saying every time he sees me I'm either drinking a soda/water and it's okay to let loose sometimes. He resorted to teasing me into drinking, calling me princess. I don't know what that had to do with not wanting to drink. All my friends there knew what I was like before, how bad my drinking was, so they kept trying to steer the conversation so he'd forget about me. But every now and then he'd hand me a shot glass or a beer and would not let it go even after telling him yet again that I didn't want to drink. My wife became uncomfortable with his behavior. I think she was worried I'd actually drink. She grabbed the shot glass from me, dumped it in the sink, and told him to stop it already. He looked between us and grinned like he understood now. Mark joked that maybe we should get my wife drunk first, then that'll get her to loosen up the leash she has on me. I'll admit, that made me see red. I got in his face and told him, actually I don't drink because last time I did I almost King died, so unless you want me puking everywhere and having seizures you should shut up and leave my wife out of this. Wiped the smile off him real quick and he apologized. The rest of night went on and he finally left me alone. Our flatmate did confront me in the morning because he thinks I was too honest with Mark, and it wasn't his fault, he didn't know. He was just joking around and I made him feel bad. Our other friends agree he was being too pushy and deserved being told off. My wife agrees, so he's the only one right now that's taking Mark's side. He said I could have ignored him until he gave up instead of bringing up an uncomfortable truth from my past. Now yes, I could have just told Mark the truth without full details, but felt that's none of his business and a no should have been enough. I only got carried away when he decided to include my wife in his jokes. So yes, I am wondering if I was a bit of an a-hole for what I told him instead of keeping the peace. I have a lot of family members. I come from a religious community that doesn't believe in the public school system and tends to have a ton of kids. I have an older sister, Julia, a stepbrother, Ron, a stepsister, Molly, a half-brother, Joe, and a half-sister, Lucy. Growing up, all of us were homeschooled. This involved a lot of neglect, lack of textbooks or seasonally appropriate clothes / shoes, unheated house, and sometimes physical abuse. I lived mostly with my mom, but spent weekends with my step-family. Both houses were dysfunctional. My stepmom used to have a severe problem with alcoholism, although she's been better in the last few years. Ron is my best friend and I would be lost without him. We've supported each other through years of hard times. And we discuss a lot how our lives could have been different if we'd been sent to school or generally had a more healthy home life. Obviously, we don't want the same thing for our younger siblings, and don't want to see them struggling in minimum wage jobs while trying to study for a GED the way we're doing. When I went to visit him recently, I found that my stepmom had gone out of the country for an entire week and left the youngest two at the house. Ron and Molly both work. Molly hasn't been doing any homeschooling for about 2 years, and are out of the house for most of the day and night. I tried to help Lucy with her math homework, but she was extremely behind grade level and kept getting distracted because she had to make lunch or do chores. Joe spends all day in his room playing video games and gets no guidance from anyone. I tried to as gently as possible get him to do some reading, but he doesn't understand how serious the situation is, and obviously is having too much fun to care. So I called CPS and reported educational neglect. And obviously everyone knew it was me. And Ron told me that stepmom said I wasn't welcome at the house anymore and to never contact any of them again. Molly is extremely mad at me. She blocked me on Facebook and doesn't have a cell phone where I can reach her. Julia, who somehow heard about all this despite living across the country, also blocked me on Facebook and reported my Facebook as impersonating a celebrity. Facebook deleted it, generally making everything harder. This stings even more because I'm already estranged from my bio mom over my religious beliefs. I now have no family members left, besides Ron, thank bejeebus, who want anything to do with me. I feel like I make enemies everywhere I go. Ron has been saying for years that he can't call CPS, and I guess this is why, but at least he doesn't blame me. He suggested that I try to talk to stepmom once some time has passed, but I would have no idea where to begin. So, my fiancé took up cooking during quarantine. We used to cook little and instead ate a lot out of the house. We could afford it and tended to eat healthy. Of course, we can both cook, but given our busy schedule, it was easier to eat out. Also, to be honest, I don't really like cooking and consider it a chore to be avoided. I love food, but there are other things that I would rather do in my own time. Due to quarantine, my fiancé has decided to cook more and has found that she enjoys it a lot. This is great. I am happy for her that she has discovered something new that brings her joy. Turns out she's pretty good at it too, and she cares about learning new skills, etc., so I benefited too. I still don't really like cooking myself, as I said, so in exchange for her putting all that effort into cooking, I help her out by paying for takeout in the evenings when she doesn't feel like cooking, and also I do everything else, wash the dishes, clean the table, etc. on the days she cooks. To the best of my knowledge, she agreed that this was an appropriate compromise, and of course, if she felt it was unfair, I would be happy to fill the gap in other ways. But she seemed to enjoy it. As her culinary experiments expanded into baking and became more complex overall, she began to involve me in cooking. I would go into the kitchen to have a drink and check it out, and she would say, "Oh, could you help me chop this while I fry this?" Or something like that. I cut carrots for her or something like that, chatted with her about food, and then went back to my business. I didn't mind it at all. But gradually I became her sous chef, especially when she wants to cook food together. Keep in mind that her culinary experiments are complex and sometimes take 2 or more hours. So my whole evening goes into these culinary endeavors, and it happens several times a week. On top of that, she tends to boss me around in the kitchen and can be a little rude. As you can probably guess, we got into a fight over this. I told her that I don't like her attitude in the kitchen when I help, and I don't like to cook in general. I would feel better helping her if she wasn't so rude to me. But honestly, I don't want to spend 8+ hours every week cooking. It's not my hobby, it's hers. If she wanted me to take part in cooking, I bought everything or cooked something simple. She was very upset. She said it was unfair, that I was enjoying the fruits of her labor but not doing my part. And that cooking took 2 hours and dishwashing / cleaning only half an hour. I told her that it was her decision to cook very complex dishes and that I would be happy if she made a simple pizza or roast. After a certain point, the sophistication of her dishes moves into hobby territory. And I resent being made to feel like a bad partner because I don't want to spend a few evenings on her hobby. We haven't really worked it out. I actually bought / cooked my own food a few times so I didn't enjoy the fruits of her labor. But that seemed to upset her even more, and our refrigerator started to fill up with more leftover food than she could eat herself. Another time I helped her but told her I had to go on video chat at 8 p.m. and she got upset when I actually stopped helping, and left even though I told her beforehand. I'm afraid I told her somewhat caustically that I was not her sous chef to command the kitchen. I tried to discuss it with her again when we felt calmer. I told her that I liked that she found a new hobby. But it's her hobby and I can't help it and don't want to feel obligated to do it. She countered that it was not feminist of me to put the cooking on her and benefit from it without helping her. The feminist connection doesn't make much sense to me because neither of us used to cook much. And she decided to take up cooking herself, but of course I didn't tell her that. I told her that if she wanted to discuss the division of labor in our household, we could do so and come up with something new that reflected the fact that she now cooks more. We tried to do this, but she wanted to count all the time she spends cooking as time around the house. So, according to her ideal distribution of housework, she spends over 10 hours cooking just dinner each week. which somehow leaves me with almost all other chores around the house. I told her I didn't like it because cooking complicated meals is a hobby. It's not fair to say that 6/10 hours of her housework is actually her hobby, and I have to do the equivalent amount of real housework if that makes sense. So we are in a bit of an impasse. Am I really a bad feminist? I don't think I'm wrong. I'm very familiar with emotional labor, mental stress, and all that, but I may be wrong. I love this woman and obviously want to marry her. But we are usually good at making logical decisions, and this is the first time we have had such a disagreement. I don't know how to get her to understand the line between cooking as a necessary activity and cooking as a hobby. P.S. The fiancé has taken up cooking gourmet meals as a hobby. But now it becomes my responsibility to help out and do more housework that I don't think I should. My unmarried partner lives with me and my children who are 7, 12, and 18. He has 2 children aged 5 and 13, but they live with their mother. We've had his kids over whenever we can and I enjoy it. However, they are very different to mine, who are all mostly easygoing and respectful. And it has been just the 4 of us for most of their lives. His kids are very loud, destructive, and demanding often. We made the adjustment, and eventually they started staying over every other weekend. But his son, Spencer, has become harder to deal with over time. He'll blow up if he doesn't get his way, insult my son if he loses a game, goes into the bedrooms and takes things without asking, complains about every meal we make, expects us to buy him whatever he wants no matter cost, and generally acts like a spoiled brat. He can also be sweet, of course. He's a child and he's not evil, but this is fairly constant. We don't let it slide, but I also want to give him benefit of the doubt. He's 13, he could be acting out for lots of reasons with a weird family dynamic, I'm sure. I try my hardest to help him feel comfortable and heard w/us, but his entitlement is rampant. It started to stress my kids out, and yesterday was the last straw for me. We were all about to go to the mall when my 12y//o son asked if anyone had seen his birthday money. He had $100 saved, disappeared from his desk. Everyone, including Spencer, looked everywhere. Spencer even asked my son if he'd spent it and forgot, or if he'd left it at school, etc. Spencer then went outside to sit in the car alone and wait to leave. My partner went out to talk to him, which eventually led to getting him to empty his pockets. He had stolen the $100 to spend at the mall. My partner told him off, texted his mom about it and told me, then gave it back to my son. Quietly furious, we went out as planned after a talk with Spencer as to not ruin the day for the other kids. He didn't seem to feel guilty at all, even asked us to get him a $120 jacket while out. Once they were back at their mom's, I told my partner I don't want Spencer in the house anymore, at least for now. I do love his kids, and I don't want them to not see their dad. My partner has a house he doesn't use, so I suggested on those weekends we take the kids there for now. Then when any of mine aren't feeling it, they can go home and we can get some quality time, and so his kids don't have to share his attention as much. He thinks this is dramatic, an overreaction. I've told him I'm open to other ideas but won't budge from my stance. I don't want my kids feeling like they need to guard their space or to be uncomfortable in their own home. My youngest has autism and gets overstimulated with them around sometimes. He gets along w/5y//o but needs breaks. My 12y//o is quite anxious and 18y//o has bipolar disorder. They're introverted, home is their safe haven and weekends are the only real free time they have. But I also don't want to be unfair to his kids.